Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Liberation Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan, and today we have a bonus for you. I'm working on a collaboration with a new colleague. She will introduce herself momentarily. I just wanted to let you all know that this is going to be a treat. So lock in, tune in, and I hope you have a wow because we have some nuggets to share, and hopefully it will help you along your way. So let's go ahead and get started with this bonus episode.
Well, hello, welcome everyone. We have a special episode of the Clarity Lens today. I'm paired with Renee Jordan, and we're super excited to be here. As you know, I'm the host of the Clarity Lens podcast. I integrate that into how decision making and stress and anything like that in life affects that, especially when it comes to finances and everything else. But then Renee here is going to go and jump in and tell her all about herself. So, Renee, go ahead and jump in.
Hello, everyone. We're so glad to have you here today. My name is Dr. Renee Jordan, and I am the host of the Black Liberation Tech podcast. It is not only a podcast, but also an open educational resource. And with that podcast, I help Latinas, Afro Latinas, Black women and girls navigate careers and academia, so school. And I also share AI literacy, the things that you should know, as well as examples of what to do. And the open educational resource has prompts that you can tailor for yourself in order to help you navigate large projects, school, career changes, etc.
Right. It's very impressive, Renee. We
Thank
love it. So
you.
thanks for joining with us today and sharing your expertise and just having a good conversation here. So today's episode, we wanted to focus on a topic that I implemented through the podcast there, that we don't have to have everything figured out. If you don't, it's okay. Life always changes. So, one of the biggest myths many of us grow up to believe is that we have to have a certain timeline and everything figured out by a certain age.
I agree. That's definitely something that seems to be a part of the programming. When we're talking about school, you always have a next step, and then you graduate. And if you're not in a program, then what are you doing? So
Exactly.
sometimes we think that we have to have things all figured out, as you said. And sometimes I've come to believe is that when you start trying things out and moving in a direction, that's when the doors start opening. That's when you start to see things a little clearer. It's almost as if the steps you take creates a light to your path and clarity.
Love it. So, Renee, oh, actually, I'm trying to think here. So, when we think about clarity, and I talked about this a few times in my podcast as well, is it's not always going to be in moments of certainty. It's going to be in moments of when you don't really know what's going to happen next, and taking that next step is probably what's best for you. So that's the courage of it all, and that's the beautiful thing of it. Even though it's not the easiest thing to do, trust me, been there, done
Hmm.
that with my story, and I've talked about my own, but it's an interesting journey, to say the least, on my
I,
end. But
I,
I'm sure yours is just as interesting and just
I,
as hopeful.
yes, yes, indeed. I certainly agree. And I think this is a good place for me to ask you a question so you can tell us a little bit more. So,
Sure.
or when you were younger, what did you think your life would look like?
That's I'm not laughing at this. It's a loaded question. I had a timeline really figured out for myself because I really loved research. I loved human behavior. And I fell in love with criminology and literally all of the ologies. So I wanted to I wanted to do my pathway towards somewhere in criminology, even though I focus on a lot of different areas. Either I wanted to be, at one point I wanted to be a judge, and at one point I
Wow.
wanted to do policy research for drugs and federal outline there. But obviously I'm here now, so that it didn't go that way, and that's okay. I went through few different layoffs and transitions, and now here I am owning my own business, and now I'm talking to you and having fun. And I wouldn't change that pathway whatsoever.
Excellent.
And let me ask you a quick question, Renee.
Sure.
Kind of the inverse, well, not the inverse, but just another way to look at it. How different is your life today from what you imagined at 18?
Well, my life is nothing like I imagined. I wanted to become a medical doctor. I wanted to be a pediatrician. That's what I set out to do in high school. My mom pulled me aside in middle school and said, "Hey, if you want to go to college, you're going to have to get a scholarship." And I said, "Oh, got it." And so I had opportunities to participate in summer programs with different colleges and universities. And I took a look at their requirements and I mapped out my high school career from there. So that
Mhm.
determined which advanced courses I took, taking extra math, extra foreign languages, as well as making sure that I was engaged in volunteer work and other things so that I would be a well-rounded applicant. And so I set out to do biology, pre-med, and I did that. And I decided, well, after I graduated, you have to get a job, right? So I
Right.
got a job at Georgetown University, their Lombardi Research Cancer Center as an executive assistant. And I figured this would allow me to take a look at what doctors do, like on a regular basis, outside of whatever appointments that I
Sure.
had with a pediatrician. And I went to the mail room or took a walk to the mail room, walked past one of the med school classrooms, and there was a cadaver covered in a sheet.
Oh, that'll wake you up, so
I
to
ran.
speak.
And it definitely did just that. It woke me up not to a reality of, Renee, what in the world did you do? But that's not it. It's really not it for me. And that's okay because it takes people who aren't going to run
Sure, absolutely.
in
And that,
order to do that kind of job. And so I found employment other in other places after that. And one was accounting. And then after that, my mom encouraged me to teach biology since I had a degree in biology. And in order to become an educator, I had to take tests. I had to not work over the summer in order to do my shadowing and student teaching. And that sent my trajectory off into education. And I've held a few positions in education. Now I'm in higher education and I have a consulting company that is an educational consulting company, Jordan Nuance. And so Black Liberation is a product of my company. And so I wouldn't take anything from my journey. And it was almost as if that interaction with the cadaver was just the wake up call that I needed to say, this isn't it, but it's going to be okay.
I like that approach because I always loved education. I loved school. I loved my undergraduate program. I loved I loved my master's program as well. It was just so it really challenged me. And I knew that I wanted to do something with that, like I said, but then now with my business now, I still get to educate and learn more, but just in different ways.
Yes.
And one of my now focuses is to help educators like you, Renee, or within the public school system understand their pensions and their 401ks and anything else that they need help with the financial situations they are in. And I can't tell you how much that means to me because my dad was an educator for over 47 years. I have
Wow.
friends that are educators, special education. My daughter's laughing. And my daughter is autistic, but she's involved with the public school system. So very much intertwined with all that. So education, I think, is one of our loves, I think, together, Renee, right?
Yes. I think so. We definitely agree on that. I enjoy teaching in various capacities, and I do have a knack in order to help translate specifically tech to
Mhm.
the everyday person. And even as a biology teacher, I help people with tech. And so tech was something that followed me and that I continue on with today.
I love it. I love it. So that was a little snippet of us about everything that we do and what we love, and I love it for us. So
Yes.
we wanted to dive into our segment here, why we fear uncertainty, the unknown. So why do we?
Okay. Well, let's start by asking another question,
Hmm.
and I'll let you take the lead
Sure.
on this. What have you learned about why uncertainty feels so uncomfortable?
That's a good question. I think uncertainty feels uncomfortable because we tend to confuse uncertainty with danger. When we don't know what's going to happen next, our brain wants to fill in those blanks desperately. It's just how we are wired. And usually it doesn't fill them in with the best case scenario. Let's be honest, we think of what's going to go wrong first. Typically, that's what we do because having an answer feels safer than not knowing anything.
Mm,
And that's fair, that's justified. And I've definitely learned that about myself in particular. There have been a lot of periods in my life where I didn't know where the hell I was going or what was next. Like I said, I had to pivot careers after a couple layoffs. I had left an abusive relationship, building a business and raising my beautiful daughter. And just like life in general, things just are thrown at you.
hmm
And I think for a long time, I thought I needed a plan before I could move forward. And I found that was not true. And what I've learned is that uncertainty, it doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong.
hmm
Sometimes it just means you're in transition. And honestly, clarity usually comes from moving through the uncertainty. I think we kind of touched on that briefly in the beginning. It's not necessarily like sitting there and trying to figure your way out of it because you're just gonna fill your mind with thoughts you don't need.
hmm
Um, and I personally now what I've also learned is that I don't need to know exactly what's going to happen 6 months from now or even 6 hours from now to make a good decision for today. I just need enough information and enough confidence, and the confidence is important to take that next step. Because if I didn't take those next steps after the career pivots and building my business and leaving my abusive relationship and doing things out of my norm and out of my comfort zone, well, then I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to
hmm
you. So that's a great way of looking at it.
Thank you. Thank you
Hmm.
so much. I really like you talking about being in a state of transition because there was a song that they used to sing at my church talking about life is filled with swift transitions.
Hmm.
And that's something that I have learned to appreciate because it means I'm not being stagnant,
Hmm.
even if it's uncertain. So thank you for that, Laura. I do have another question for you.
Go for it. Shoot.
Why do people often wait until they feel ready?
Hmm. Another great question there. This is going to be a hard truth, but ultimately, I think the word ready is sometimes just a nicer word for I'm scared.
Hmm.
Because if we wait forever or we wait until we feel that we are completely ready for something, we're going to wait forever. We're going to stay there. We're going to stay in that moment and not make a change. And most of the time, it's just having the confidence to come first. So, like, for example, you can think, well, once I feel more confident in the situation, then I'll apply to this job. Or once I know exactly what I'm doing, then I'm going to start my business. And then, or another way to look at it is, once I know I'm not going to fail at something, then I'll make the change for myself. But that's not how life works because life is short. And some of the biggest things that I've done in my life, especially the last like 5 years, I did it when I was absolutely not ready at all. I had no idea what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I've learned that readiness is something that you're going to develop after you start. And that's absolutely okay. You can take that first step and figure something out, whether it's right or wrong, make the mistake, you learn about it, you adjust. And then you suddenly realize, and even when I was starting my business, I had, like I said, I was scared because I've never wanted to think I would work for myself, but here I
Mm-hmm.
am. And then once I got going and I'm to here now, I'm like, oh, I can actually do this. Look at me go. And I think the last little piece is there's like that perfection piece too that plays
Okay.
into it. And sometimes we're not waiting just to be ready. We're waiting to guarantee that we're not going to disappoint ourselves or anybody else because there may be people that rely on us for income or whatever the case may be. And I think disappointment plays into that fear aspect. So that's what I would say.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Laura.
You're welcome.
I definitely picked up on what you were saying as far as someone saying, I'm not ready, being the same as saying, I'm scared. And being afraid to take that first step or to move. When speaking to someone, they put it in terms of like having analysis paralysis. They're
Right.
trying to have it all figured out. And as a result of essentially freezing or not moving because they're trying to do all the calculations ahead of time, they're stuck. So I definitely appreciate you for sharing that and touching on perfectionism as well, which is something that really doesn't exist except
No,
in our minds. Um,
no, nothing in this life will ever be perfect.
yes.
It will not work that way because if you think everything's gonna be perfect, you're just gonna disappoint yourself over and over again. And that's not what you want. It's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to adapt to the
Mhm.
situation.
I
Absolutely.
definitely agree with that.
Okay, Renee, I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
So thinking about your education background and how you transitioned to it outside of medical field, how has education unintentionally taught us that there is one right answer and only one?
I think that education has unintentionally taught us that there's only one right answer, one way to go, just by like the tracks they set you on
Hmm.
from third grade on, or even kindergarten, whenever they start testing and doing sight words. And all of those things are fine in order to measure growth. However, I don't think that it's just has to be a singular path, if you will,
Hmm.
or a singular response in terms of answers. Now, with math, of course, unless you're dealing with something else, there tends to be a right answer. Now, when I taught high school biology and I got to evolution, I had to be ready because the students were going to throw a fit because my students, their background did not subscribe to evolution. They said,
Okay.
nope, that's not it. It's the devil. And this was in public school. This was not,
Sure.
a Christian school or a private school that had a specific lens, if you will, but they would outright protest. And I said, okay, I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm asking you to understand the theory. And what did we say about theories? It's the best way that they have to describe a situation.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm asking you to respond to the test prompts and questions based on their current best explanation for how things are. And that left room for them to still hold on to their beliefs and what they found to be true to themselves and just answer the question because that's what they're asking you and understand that's just a perspective and it doesn't have to be the one that you hold on to.
Very good.
So I think that with the humanities, there's more room for interpretation and understanding and perspectives and ways of viewing and looking. However, sometimes we're required in other disciplines to go with what is best known at the time. And that's not to say that it's wrong, but because you choose to work within a certain framework, that allows you to progress
Okay, very good.
as well as respond in different situations based on, evidence and things that have been tested, so forth and so on. So I'm not saying down with, theories. No, they're important. They help us navigate, but at the same time, sometimes not sometimes there's room for more answers.
Absolutely. That's why I love theologies, I call them.
Hmm.
When I started with chronology, sociology, biologies, I enjoyed them very much. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that, and I like to research. So that's what I loved about them was just the expansion of the mind and the things that
Hmm.
you get into, and even just human behavior as well. But that's neither here nor there. So now I know we can understand we like how it expands mindsets and how we think and perspectives. So, kind of transitions to my next question for you. What kind of happens to students in particular when they think they have to choose one interest instead of exploring several of them?
That's a good question, Laura. I think that when students feel like they have to choose one interest, it does go back to the tracks thing. Like, are you college? Like, are you prepping for college? Are you preparing to go into a trade? Are
Hmm.
you preparing to go into the military? So it's almost as if, are you preparing to go to Job Corps, junior college? Like, things can be very scripted. And based on your interests or one interest, you can narrow those options because even if you choose any of those potential paths, there's a way to touch on your interests in those along those different paths.
Okay.
Um, but I think that if students knew that they didn't have to have tunnel vision as it related to pursuing a career or pursuing their interests, or even understanding themselves, that it would open opportunities for that interdisciplinary interaction.
Sure.
One of the things that I found helpful was that I grew up in a black church and I was able to sing, I was able to dance. I was able to facilitate Sunday school. I would say facilitate because that's the kind of educator I am. I'm not going to
Hmm.
lecture. So facilitate Sunday school. And I got to play all these different roles and touch on different interests. And some of them were asked of me. Like I didn't say, oh, yeah, I want to teach Sunday school. Somebody invited me to teach Sunday school. And so I got to touch on all these different things just within my church. And so when I went to school, I didn't sing in the choir at school. They have a choir at school, but young people can sing in the choir at school and they can
Sure.
still do other things. I did play sports and learned that some people are more serious about basketball than I was. They were trying to get the scholarship. I was just trying to, have fun and socialize after school. And I was just like, this is a lot of pressure, but I was able to explore that interest. And so I would definitely want to encourage students to explore more than one. I think sometimes it's not just school that says you have to pick one, but sometimes parents can say, just pick one thing and stick to it and be a specialist or an expert in that one thing. And it's okay to fill things out in order to see what you like. So I would get complimented on my hair. I've been doing my own hair since I was 7 years old. They're
Oh
like, "Oh,
wow.
you
Okay.
should be a hairstylist." I'm like, "No, I like to do my hair. I'm not
Big
trying to
difference.
do many heads. Like that is someone you want to be in the chair of someone who's passionate about it, enjoys it, not just for themselves in terms of doing their own hair, but also wanting to do other people's hair. And even though I had multiple interests, I was able to say, okay, this one is for me. I learned that I'm not a commissioned artist. Like you can't pay me to do art. I can create art, and if you like it, then I'll either give it to you or you can buy it. But that's when it's already done, and you see don't ask me to make something for you because then I'm going to be like, I don't know where to start. I'm not inspired. It's nothing, coming from the inside out. And with singing, I like to sing, but I'm not a performer.
Okay.
So I did have the opportunity to sing at the Verizon Center, Staples Center, Kennedy Center, and that was because I enjoy singing with my choir.
Okay.
And we were in the How Sweet the Sound choir competition. And so those opportunities were opened up to me. It wasn't because I said, oh, we should do a contest.
Hmm.
That wouldn't have come out my mouth. And then once we had to, up the perfection of it all, I started to be like, okay, I committed to this. I'm going to fulfill this, but this is not the love that I have for music. There's
Hmm.
other people who love music to the point of wanting to make sure that everything is crisp, this, that. But that's not necessarily me. So I think that when students think that they have to choose one interest, they're actually shrinking themselves instead of having the opportunity to explore themselves and whatever that may look like. They may need to make a wise move and choose an industry where they can make money and turn their life around.
Yes.
Or they might say, you know what? I don't have to make a whole lot of money. I can do what I love and not put pressure on myself to try and make it to seven figures out of that.
I like that. I didn't know you. I didn't know you enjoyed singing like that. So that's Kennedy Center. That's awesome. How cool was
Thank
that?
you. It was very cool. It's
Y'all don't want
something
to.
that I make sure that I tell people because they'll be like, "Oh, she's a biology teacher." And I sang at the Kennedy Center, which is something that a lot of people cannot say.
Yeah, you don't want to hear me sing. I promise. I promise. Nails on a chalkboard, I swear. But to your point too, as well, I obviously enjoy what I'm doing with my insurance and tax and bookkeeping business, but outside all that math and fun, and I guess if it's fun to me, okay, people just let it let that sink in. But I do enjoy also cooking and writing. Those are two of my other
Yes.
loves, and I love exploring new ideas, and especially when it comes to cooking different cuisines and flavors and profiles. So that's something I just love to do. But that's expanding my mindset. And education is always something I like to do, learning everything I can about something that I enjoy. So we love that. So, with all that being said, maybe certainty, as we've talked about, isn't necessarily the prerequisite for action, right?
Yeah, maybe it's not. Maybe curiosity is the prerequisite for taking action. Being curious about what the possibilities are and what can come next.
I love that. And I want to transition to kind of the next point, too, because, and particularly with my podcast as well, I talk about how decision making can affect your well-being, especially when you're under stress or within grief or any type of flight or fight response in your life. Um, or we have cognitive overload, where like literally the simplest task, like literally opening an email or sending a text message, feels like just can't be done. And we get there. So
Mhm.
been there, done that. I've been guilty of that several times in my life, especially even recently. I'll admit that. I don't know about you, Renee, but
Well, I
sometimes.
that cognitive overload is definitely real, and I've learned to offload. Here, I'm gonna put this aside.
Oh yeah.
put it on a list, get some help from someone or my digital assistant, whichever is most handy. Sometimes a phone call helps as well. So, with that being said, Laura, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
What happens to our thinking when we're overwhelmed?
Oh boy. So when we look at the actual neurological basis of it all, in simplest terms, when we're overwhelmed, one of the biggest things that happens is that our ability to slow down and process information or external stimuli gets, well, hard to do. We start operating from what we call a survival response.
Okay.
So the flight or flight, which we've heard of that response before, but there's even called the freeze and even fawn, where you just kind of are in a freeze mindset and you fray away from it. So instead of thinking of the question, okay, what are my options here and what makes the most sense for the situation? Our brain will immediately go to, how do I get out of this? And that can look very different from person to person. Someone might be a little more reactive or angry. They can be avoiding the problem completely by doing other tasks or whatever the case may be.
Mm,
And some people shut down and may not be able to make that decision. Or, which I am 100% guilty of, and something I am working on actively, is the people pleaser. I'm a people pleaser.
oh,
I
wow.
really am.
Hmm.
So I try to start, and other people like me make sure everybody around them is happy so they feel like their environment is safe.
Okay.
And when we try, and excuse me, we add like the cognitive overload with just like life in general, with bills, school, children, marriage, relationships, family, whatever the illnesses, mind you, even the smallest decisions can feel just astronomical. Just, I can't even wrap your head around it. So I think sometimes that's why when we feel overwhelmed, we're like looking back later and thinking like, ooh, yeah, why did I react that way? I knew better than that.
Mm,
And on a neurological basis, you're not necessarily forgetting how to think. That's not what's happening.
okay.
What you were trying to do in that moment when if your brain felt like it was a threat, you were trying to make decisions with way more information and emotion than you could comfortably process on your own. And that's what your brain has learned over time, especially with if you've been in situations of stress. Let's see what else. Stress is a huge one. Um, Illnesses, grief, whatever the case may be. And I think it's important where I think giving yourself a little space is crucial.
Okay.
Because ultimately, the best decision isn't making a decision immediately. It's getting yourself regulated enough that you can actually start thinking like yourself again. And again, that's not the easiest thing to do, mind you. That takes time, but that's the first step of clarity is finding that moment for yourself.
Mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That actually leads me to another question.
Hmm.
Now, you talked about getting to that moment of clarity, but what does chronic stress do? What does it do to decision making?
Well, I can obviously that varies from person to person because we
Okay.
all have um situations where we feel like we're in survival mode.
Okay.
And I think chronic stress can really change the way we make decisions because you start kind of prioritizing immediate relief over long-term consequences. Sorry, I had to step away there for a second. Um, but when you are constantly stressed, your brain becomes focused on essentially what do I need to deal with right now instead of
Hmm.
what's actually the best situation for me. Um, from my experience, that's what I can attest to. when I was leaving, in the beginning, trying to learn how to leave my abusive relationship, I was literally in survival mode. Even if nothing was wrong, um, in going on that day, I still felt that everything had to be in the right place. And
Mm,
I'm just waiting for that shoe to drop of what's going to happen, go wrong, all of that. And even there were situations where things were going wrong and it was escalating, I shut down. I was that type of person. And on the outside, I looked fine. I
mm,
looked confident. Looked strong. I was doing my best to be happy, but at the same time, internally, I was crushed to my core.
hmm
Because when you're constantly told that you're not good enough, you're not a good mother, um, and not going to get into too much, but told words that just consistently break you down, you start believing it for yourself. And you know it's not true. And as an educated woman, I know I knew it wasn't right, but then I kept thinking, well, maybe he is right. Wrong.
I
Had to
know
learn
that's
that on my
right.
own though. Um, so when we think about instead of what we need to deal with right now, instead of what's the best decision for me, when you're especially in a situation like that, that's where emotional reasoning comes into play.
Okay.
So at the moment, I'm thinking like, and people in my similar situation feel like this is going badly, so it's going to go bad. Or I feel like I can't handle this, so I'm not going to be able to handle it. But the feelings that you feel are information. They're not always facts. And that's what I
Okay.
had to learn. That's what I had to differentiate between. And I think the most important distinction is that because when you're under chronic stress, everything is going to feel urgent. Everything can feel like, I got to get it solved right now, right? And I'm trying to solve all of this, but when we had just learned about Ariana's autism diagnosis, that felt like another dagger. Like, I
Mm,
don't know. I immediately I took it all in and like I said on the outside I looked strong enough like the mother that truly cared because I did. But the inside I'm like, is this something I can really do?
hmm
But what I also had to learn as well is the healthiest thing that you can do is separate the feeling from the decision. So ask yourself some questions. Instead of like things like, what am I actually feeling? What do I actually know? What are my options? And do I need to decide on this today? Because we're not always bad at making decisions. Let's just make that very clear. Because we're incapable of making good ones. We're literally making decisions from places of exhaustion and fear and extreme overload. And when you recognize those facts and information, that's when you begin to start creating a little more space between the emotion and the choices. So
Okay.
I made the choice very slowly. I got to it point where I said, I looked myself in the mirror and I did not like the person I was becoming or who I was when I was with my ex. So I had some friends help me pack out some stuff. I moved out. I became a single mother and I was scared as hell, Renee. You have no idea. Because there was the kind of the shame of it all.
Mm, okay.
But that is the best decision I could have ever made. Because now that my flight or fight response has diminished, my nervous system has finally found ways to just relax
Okay.
once, and it feels really good. It feels so damn good. So that is where it comes. Now, everybody situation is different and they may not have all the options, but again, it's to that back to that point where I mentioned earlier. It's just having the confidence of finding the space and making that first step for yourself, even if it's just asking yourself a better question.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Laura.
You're
I
welcome.
like that asking yourself a better question. I was taking some notes as you were speaking and you talked about how feelings are information and not facts. And
Hmm.
I thought that was something, definitely a nugget that we can walk away with. Also, separating the feelings from the decision. That's something to hold on to. And you also don't have to decide today.
No,
And that's a decision.
that is a
And
decision, a small
one
one,
that,
but significant.
yes, and one that you can definitely call on whenever you feel like you're in that stuck place. One thing that I've noticed while teaching AI literacy is that sometimes when people feel overwhelmed,
Hmm.
they go to AI to ask it to make decisions for them.
Guilty. Guilty.
So you want to make sure, even if you are going to AI for assistance in the decision-making process, that you're evaluating the response in terms of who you are as an individual. While these platforms and tools are helpful, there is bias that's baked in as a
Hmm.
result of who made it and where the data is being pulled from. So, if we're talking about generative AI tools like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, they're pulling from the internet, and based on the model or the update, that time may be frozen, so it might not be current. And then in one of my workshops, I asked students, I said, well, what do you know about what people say on the internet? Because if AI is pulling this information from the internet, what do you know about people? And the
Hmm.
student said, people lie. I said, ah, exactly. So you definitely want to evaluate what's being pulled, because what if the AI got a hold of a lie and is trying to offer you that as an option? So definitely verify, reach out to people who are experts, reach out to the sites that have expertise. If you're employed and you have, is it EAP? You have services that you can take advantage of, like therapy, to help you navigate those spaces. That's definitely something to turn to as well. Now, one of the things that you talked about when people are stuck
Hmm.
or they're suffering from chronic stress was to not make that decision today. And so being able to slow down, take a beat, reflect, and just sit in the moment, I think is also an option. So while, once again, AI is a tool that we can use and reach out to, don't let it replace your thinking. Allow AI to create space for thinking. So perhaps brainstorming options in terms of possibilities, as opposed to looking for the answer, but what are some options? So yeah.
Yeah, I like that part because I use obviously a little bit AI for my business and some marketing. So I use this to kind of bounce off some ideas. But the way we think about things, it does come from a place of it's deep. It's deep inside
Mhm.
yourself. But like I had mentioned, it's not always just doing everything at once. It's just maybe just asking yourself a different question about what your options are, what you could do for yourself, and kind of reflecting on all of that. So when we're thinking about us in a current stage, Renee,
Mhm.
there are some questions I kind of like to ask myself to self-reflect of what I'm doing and my stage of life. The few questions I do ask myself, or like, how do I currently define success? Because that can mean a multitude of things. And where is that kind of stemming from? And is it still serving me to define that? And I can ask anybody else that question too, but it really makes you think about life and those
Mhm.
decisions. And especially if you're in a state of chronic stress or any flight or flight responses, where I have been many times in my life, and I'm sure you have too as well. Um, so that's kind of where I think of. But is there like any questions that you think you ask yourselves that you're moving on into your with your business and your consulting that you like to think about?
Yes, some questions that I like to think about include what assumptions am I making?
Oh, I like that.
I'm a very curious person and can be very suspicious. And my
Yeah.
brain also can jump to all the way to the end of the line that I have not seen nor have proof of yet and say, oh, this is that and the third. Well, this, that, and the third has not happened. Back up a little bit. Let's, be present. And instead of making assumptions, which we know leads to, can lead to not good things,
Right.
like making an ASS out of you and me.
I was just gonna say that you caught me.
Leave room for things to show up and appear. So, what assumptions am I making is a question that I have to return to. Another one is what story have I been telling myself?
Hmm.
Whether it's about people that I work with or that I socialize with, what have I been telling myself about them? And how am I allowing that to impact my interaction with them? So, once again, is the story based on evidence? That's one thing, because they say if somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. But if it's not a positive story, if it's not affirming, if it's not benefiting myself, then that story needs to be questioned. Another question that I ask myself, what expectations am I carrying that don't actually belong to me?
Ooh, I like that one a lot.
Now, expectations can be placed on us based on how we were brought up, how we were taught, whether at home, at school, or other places. And I had to come to realize that some of those expectations, when I look at myself, they didn't align. So expect, why would I hold on to that expectation? For example, oh, Renee, when are you going to get married? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm not asking anyone to marry me. So since I'm not going to ask someone to marry me, like, you don't get to ask that question either or expect that of me. And just allowing myself to be. So that's just one, lighthearted example. But what expectations am I carrying that don't actually belong to me?
I really do like that question a lot because we do, and I mean, in terms of society, we have a lot of expectations. And me in particular, as a mom, I have a lot of expectations to how I'm supposed to be raising my child every which way. And it's a lot of pressure. And there are days where it's harder than others and it's um it's very rewarding, but there are some days where I feel crushed. I
Mm,
absolutely. Um, but I would change that for the world now. So when I'm thinking about that question, I'm thinking about another one real quick that I used to kind of that I asked myself to actually when I was getting out of my abusive relationship and starting over. What the hell am I afraid of?
mm,
Failure? Done that multiple times in my life, learning that failure is a part of your success story.
all right.
You can't be successful if you don't try at something. And hell, I've fallen more times than I could count. But
Hmm.
I know it's what they say is it's how you stand back up, right? Not always am I going to stand up with full confidence. Let's just be clear on that. But It's standing up is what's important. And judgment, when I was trying to become a single mom and building a business, like am I really gonna be that person? Are they gonna like look at me differently for doing this? No, I don't care. I don't care. I am who I am.
Yes.
And as for starting over, has not been the easiest thing in the world for sure. But again, I wouldn't change that. Would not change that. Um, and again, all the failures and successes that I've had are a part of me just even just taking that first step and trying. So that's what I love about myself. Are there any other like questions that come to mind that you think about as well when you're kind of maybe found yourself in a situation where you were in high stress or in a grief period or anything like that?
Mhm. So, one question that comes to mind is what parts of myself have I been ignoring?
Oh,
So, if I'm in a high
okay.
stress situation and things are chaotic, sometimes at work things can get chaotic because of what's happening during that season. We're at the startup of another academic year, so we're busy. But in terms of what am I ignoring, I have to make sure that I'm tending to, not that work isn't important, but I have to make sure that I'm tending to the things that I enjoy and bring me joy. And that is where I get to delve into my passion project,
Hmm.
Black Liberation Tech, with the same expertise as I carry in other spaces, but it's for me, if that makes sense.
It
And I
absolutely does.
love to share it with people. And I wanted to do an after school program. And so Black Liberation Tech is actually my after school program. The podcast, the open educational resource, the cutting up of the podcast so that it's on TikTok, where my largest audience can be found.
Love it.
And so by asking myself what parts of myself have I been ignoring, that reminds me that there's things that I enjoy that require my expertise as well. And I get to do them the way I see fit. And I
Hmm.
don't have to reach a stopping point. I can just keep working on it.
I love that. I really love that. So that's a really good question to ask yourself. I love it. Um, so listeners, you've been tuning in for a minute. So I kind of wanted to take a moment now to have you do a reflection for yourself. It doesn't have to be immediate. You can always come back, but taking a moment for yourself, maybe today, tomorrow, whenever the case may be, and just pause. Write down some questions for yourself that even if you want to bounce off Renee and I, right, Renee? It's
Yes.
cool. Just write. Write them down and think about your life and how it feels, so to speak. You do that too? Sorry, my daughter is looking at me. She just handed me a Tootsie Roll, so I will
Well,
take
that's kind of her.
that. Very kind. Um, and then I kind of wanted to transition to our kind of our last little piece real quick before we jump off, Renee. Looking like future me.
Okay.
So we can kind of go back and ask each other a question or two if we'd like when we think about this. But um, imagine yourself 5 years from now,
Okay.
like what you've achieved and who you've become as a woman. So when you think about 5 years from now, Renee, what have you learned?
I have learned that I I'll share this, something that
Hmm.
I've would tell people. My worst days are better than somebody else's best day.
Okay.
And I say that because I have seen myself demonstrate excellence in ways that, yes, I believe that I did well, but other people have also told me, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And they notice it about me to the point where they have to verbally say something.
Okay.
And so, one thing that I've learned is that sometimes, it's not going to be the best day, but if I keep showing up, it's really going to be okay. And
Hmm.
things will be better if I just keep showing up. And that's something that my mom would say. If you have an embarrassing moment, just outlive the moment and keep showing up. So my CV is long, my resume is long, and it's because I've done a lot and I've
Sure.
accomplished a lot and I've done it well. And I'm not saying all of this to say that I'm better than people, but I've experienced so much on the high point or the high side that it's okay that I don't have to stay there all the time. But it's all right for me to just coast from time to time. And my coasting is better than what some people do every day.
And that's just an amazing feat to have, right? I love it. I love it. Maybe one more question for you real quick, when I'm thinking about this. Um, what relationships that you've built or continue to build now, and into the future, which one of those are going to matter the most to you?
Okay. I think that there's a there's different types of relationships. The ones that I make sure that I hold on to and actively nourish or feed or tap into would be those that are reciprocal.
Hmm.
So people who have my best interest at heart, they see about me, they care for me, and they are there on a regular basis, whatever that may look like. It might be daily, weekly, quarterly. Those friendships where it doesn't matter how long you haven't spoken, when you do call, maybe it's 6 months, 8 months later, you're able to pick right up right where you were the last time without having to learn them all over again. Those relationships are important to me. And the reason I said there are different types of relationships because not all relationships will be reciprocal. Some are paying it forward and some are paying it back.
Yes.
So, paying it back because somebody else mentored me and they went the path or a direction that I had not had the opportunity to walk, creating opportunities for others who are coming along the way. Now, I'm not looking for them to create an opportunity for me necessarily, but knowing that somebody else created an opportunity for me, that's something that I want to pay back as well as pay forward because hopefully, in having those types of relationships, it allows them to appreciate what a 5-minute conversation can do, an email, a letter of recommendation, and those types of things really can change opportunities and options for folks. So those are important. I want to make sure that I keep my eyes and ears open to those who are around me. And if I'm asked to write a letter of recommendation, then I can give one that is distinct and based upon who they are as an individual and the qualities that I appreciate. And so sometimes that also means saying, hey, I'm going to have an opportunity for people to share their research. I'm going to have an opportunity for people to give tips on getting an internship. And as a result of being able to open up that opportunity for them to share, I can then write a letter of recommendation and say,
Sure.
okay,
Hmm.
I experienced this person during this program. This is how they were able to perform. And so That matters a lot to me. Now, a question that I want to ask you, Laura.
Sure.
What advice would future Laura give current Laura?
Dang, that is a good one. Um, I think future me would tell me now that that it's okay to fail. And I mentioned that kind of previously a little bit, but I think that's a good thing to go by. Especially with my business now, I've been intentional about how I want to do it with my clients and how I want to serve other people and focus on. However, the nuances with it all has been an amazing feat, but also a difficult one. Because when we talk about finances, particularly taxes and insurance,
Mm-hmm.
not not the most fun thing to think about or to do. But what I've tried to focus on is to humanize the process. That's why I focus on making particular guides and resources to break down those complex, because they are extremely nuanced and can be difficult, especially if you find yourself in a complex situation. But with those coming together, I will admit it hasn't gotten the role, so to speak, on what I've wanted, but I am hopeful already. I know I have the space, I have the expertise, I have a great team behind me, with all these resources that is going to uplift. So if I have to do different things to try and I probably will may fail, that's absolutely okay because like I mentioned earlier, failing is part of your success story and it's part of mine. Especially when if listeners to my podcast have listened to my story about evolving over the career paths and everything else, and pretty much had to question my whole life at one point.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the journey, and I can't regret any of it, and I won't.
I know that's right.
I won't. But that's what future me would probably tell current me. It's like just continue to do what you do, but if you fail, that's just part of the journey.
Excellent. I like that.
That's what I would say. Did you have any other questions, or did you want to?
I think that I want to ask you one of the questions that you asked me.
Okay.
So, you talked about future me and current me.
Hmm.
I want to go back to the relationships piece for you.
Okay.
What relationships matter most?
Hmm. For future me. Well, I think, and this is probably obvious, but my family, the relationship I build with my daughter, uh,
Mm-hmm.
making sure she has the confidence to make those steps and pursue what she enjoys. Right now, she's very much into painting and art and music, which is amazing. And from where she was, we did have, when she was younger, after her autism diagnosis, there was a speech and motor delay in herself. So we
Okay.
found, um, so for her to go from having some difficulties there to where she is now is just by far one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. It's just phenomenal. But continuing to build her confidence and her skill sets and making sure that she knows that it's okay to stumble, like I mentioned. Now with my fiance building our life together, making sure I have that support from him, and him understanding my goals and I understanding his goals to propel forward, so we can do things together. Now, outside of like immediate relationships, having a good friend base as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very lucky in my life that I have a set of friends that I've known since kindergarten. It's
Yes.
yeah. So over what, 27 years.
That
And
is wonderful.
that's probably my biggest flex in my life
I
right
know that's
now.
right.
Um, but I think one of the hardest things that, and maybe you can relate to this as well, Renee, when you talked about this, touched on it briefly when I asked you, is that some relationships are going to be transactional
Yeah.
and some, even though the effort is there and there's nothing that you not necessarily did wrong. It's just life has different paths for you, and the communication is just piece isn't going to be there anymore. I think that's one of the hardest things I've had to, you know, deal with,
Hmm.
recognize, because I prided myself in having good connections and having a lot of friends growing up. And people always told me, like, look, we don't know how you keep up with everybody. And I'm like, I honestly don't know either. But I'm also at this point in my life where I'm more than content with the close knit of friends that I have now. So that's
All right.
huge. Lastly, and I think one of the more important ones too, and I know this sounds pretty like cliche, but my clients.
Okay.
My clients are the heart of what I do.
Hmm.
Because I found myself in a situation after I left my abusive relationship where I was financially uncertain, especially after my layoffs. I had two layoffs within 1 year of each other, which was
Wow.
it was a lot. I cried a lot. You bet. While filling out the applications here, I got tears rolling down my eyes, like, what am I actually doing with my life? Um, but um, I wanted to put myself in people's shoes too as well and feel like that I could connect on that level, but also just have the level of expertise. So that's why I continued to build my education, build my
Hmm.
certifications, and learn new niches so I can serve other populations of people. Because there, especially when it comes to finances, I talked about this in my first season of my podcast, they were not built for everybody. They're built for
Okay.
compliance, and that's it.
Hmm.
They're not built for if you're going through grief, if you have neurodivergency, if you simply just don't understand the verbiage, because a lot of it
Hmm.
is, let's be fair, there's a lot of big words in there, and it's not, words are hard. I mean, they can be, even for me sometimes learning the new
This is true.
regulations. I mean, it's a lot of language. Um, so that's why I wanted to pride myself and continue to pride myself into being that go-to person for people to better understand and break down those things. Um, so those are relationships that are going to matter to me most.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Laura.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're about time to wrap up here. I know that we have some more in the works, so audience, stay tuned for more.
Yes, yes.
But as we reflect on kind of what we talked about throughout this episode, I want you listeners to think about something real quick. And it's something I preach within my work and through my podcast as well. Because maybe when we think about clarity, it's not something we discover.
Okay.
Maybe, just maybe, it's something that we build over time.
I like that. And I would like to add to that just a touch. And maybe the future version of ourselves, we were talking about our future selves, doesn't need to be figured out today. And maybe we simply need to take the next thoughtful step.
Yes, I agree because confidence is the first step. Even if it's just, like I said, shifting your mindset and asking yourself a different question, so to speak. Well, I want to thank you, Renee, for spending time with me today and answering questions. It was beautiful insight that you had. Very much appreciated.
You're welcome. And thank you for sharing this space with me and being so transparent and vulnerable and allowing us to see what it's like to transition and take those next steps.
For sure. Now, like I said, audience, listeners, stay tuned. Renee and I have more in the works, so we look forward to speaking together more. And thanks for stopping by today.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed this bonus episode of the Black Liberation Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, rate, and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, take care. Bye bye.